Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 5, season 1 of Brave TV. We would first like to thank the Alkermes Inspiration Grant COVID-19 Relief Fund for sponsoring this season as we continue to explore how COVID-19 and current affairs are impacting our mental health. I'm Jennifer Marshall, Executive Director of This Is My Brave, and I'm so glad you're with us. Today's episode is really special. 2020 has had quite an impact on This Is My Brave. We're typically traveling the country, meeting our volunteer producers and local storytellers at beautiful theaters as they take the stage to share their stories. When the COVID pandemic hit in March, we took action to postpone our spring 2020 shows, St. Louis, Hampton Roads, Houston, and New Hampshire, to the fall. Unfortunately, the pandemic had other plans, and we are now moving to a completely virtual platform to keep our producers, storytellers, audience members, and staff safe. Today is part 1 of the Lost season, and we have our Hampton Roads producer, Lauren Hope, our College Edition producer, Audrey Grubb, and St. Louis producer, Heather Clayfish, along with This Is My Brave program manager, Katie Grana, and she's also our St. Louis co-producer. We're all going to be discussing the ups and downs of planning a show during the pandemic. So let's get started.
Hi, I am Katie Grana. I am a program manager with This Is My Brave. I live in St. Louis, Missouri, and I'm actually producing the first ever St. Louis show. So we're really excited about that. I do live with post-traumatic stress disorder, anxiety, and depression. So This Is My Brave holds a really special place in my heart. But I'm going to pass it over to my co-producer, Heather Clayfish, to introduce herself and explain a little bit more about how we found This Is My Brave and why we're involved.
Hi everyone, my name is Heather Clayfish, and I heard about This Is My Brave after I lost my son 2 years ago to suicide, and he had struggled with bipolar for several years, and Katie was one of Jason's best friends, and soon after he died, not only did Katie become my friend, but there were other people in Jason's life that also became my friend. So we were doing a lot of advocacy to really try and prevent suicide. We were looking for different charities to support, and This Is My Brave was found by Katie, and we traveled to DeKalb, Illinois, and saw a show, and we looked at each other and thought, we have got to get this to St. Louis. There is a huge platform that we could use, and my son was active in the theater, and we just thought this would be a perfect way to not only advocate, but to honor Jason, who was extremely talented. So I am beyond excited to be part of this, to be learning about people's stories and recoveries, and I just couldn't feel more fortunate or more blessed.
We're so glad that you're here, Heather. Audrey, will you give us your intro?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I am Audrey Grubb. I was first involved in This Is My Brave in 2018. I was a cast member in the Boston show. My brother and I performed together, and I wanted to get involved because I wanted to share my recovery journey with living with an eating disorder and anxiety and depression. I, over the past year, started volunteering with This Is My Brave's new college edition. And then in this past spring, I moved over to the co-producer role, and now I am the producer for the college edition. And that's kind of where I'm at.
And we're so glad you're with us too, Audrey. It's been a couple years of a journey that you've been involved, and we're so grateful for your support. Lauren, will you give us your intro?
Yes, my name is Lauren Hope. I was in the 2018 Arlington show. I remember exactly where I was when someone told me about This Is My Brave pretty incredibly. I was driving in my car. I had just recently started blogging about my mental health journey on my blog called Good Girl Chronicles. A friend of mine said, have you ever heard of This Is My Brave? People actually get on stage and share their mental health stories, which was mind-blowing to me. And I started reading the blogs and hearing about people, and it really it empowered me to keep sharing. And is a big reason I'm a motivational speaker now. So it's an amazing, amazing thing to be bringing the first Hampton Roads This Is My Brave show to our area. And I live in Chesapeake, Virginia.
Awesome, Lauren. Thank you so much. We're so grateful to you for all your storytelling expertise. You led a workshop for us at the beginning of the pandemic. So loved doing that with you. So glad you're here. Katie, you want to start us off with our first question?
Yeah. So, I mean, I have kind of an interesting role this year of being This Is My Brave staff member and a producer. And I can't always say that I've enjoyed being like the bearer of bad news when something has happened, like being behind the scenes. So, but we all started somewhere thinking that we were going to be on stage in our cities. And for the most part, each of us the first time. So like, Lauren, what was it like for you to lead auditions for the first time? So last year you were a cast member. This year you're a producer and you get to meet all of these people and be in that process. What was that like for you?
I won't lie, it was very challenging. I always like to say I'm the Paula Abdul of judges. So everyone who came through the doors, I'm like, yep, want you. Yep, want you. Yep. If it were up to me, we would have a storytelling festival, okay?
We're the same way.
So my producer really helped me think as a show producer how important it was to have different people's stories from different age groups, from different ethnicities. But it was very, very challenging knowing that I couldn't bring everybody on there, because I so believe in the power of storytelling, how healing that is. And then it made me really proud. There were moments where we laughed and we cried, and the amount of bravery, as we all know, that it takes to get up and talk about your mental health experience is, it made me really thankful and happy to be a part of this organization and this movement. But I will not lie, it was very hard.
It is hard. It's really hard feeling like you have to make these decisions. But, I think that we do have a really respectful way of going about it. And you can feel when people are just so relieved to have just signed up or told their story, which is a huge thing as well. So, Heather, I know you're like, This Is My Brave is real to me now, was at auditions. So what was that like for you?
Well, I think the process of auditions in St. Louis was very interesting in that we held auditions in January. And January in St. Louis can be really dicey as far as the weather is concerned. And we had auditions Friday night scheduled and all day Saturday scheduled. And Friday night, I remember just feeling like this sheer panic of, oh my gosh, is there going to be an ice storm, or is it going to pass us over like it normally does? And we just didn't know. And we kept listening to weather reports, and people kept saying, I can't do it tonight, but I'd like to come tomorrow. And we just really didn't even know who was going to show up, quite honestly. So it was exciting. I was so looking forward to it, just to see what was out in St. Louis, who heard about it and how they heard about it. But then Mother Nature took over, and we just had to let it go and just say, you know what, whoever shows up will show up, and that's who's meant to be there. So I was excited and nervous at the same time for different reasons, though.
I totally can relate, Heather, because there have been many a year where This Is My Brave has had auditions during the winter, and we've had inches and inches of snow, and we've done them virtual. So, and I agree, it's like the people that, when you're ready, you show up in it. And it's really neat to hear how different folks have come to the organization. So Audrey, what about for you? What was it like when you started, receiving auditions for our college edition?
Yeah, so we started auditions a couple months ago, but it's been a really crazy time because schools were canceled and students were home. So it's definitely been a challenge trying to find ways to reach students right now to audition for this, especially knowing that everything is kind of up in the air and students aren't entirely sure what the next year is going to look like, if they're going to be at school. But we are still accepting auditions, and it's been awesome to connect with people so far and hear different stories. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Awesome. We're getting there. And so if you are a college student and you happen to catch this, or you're the parent of a college student who you think would be a good fit for our show, please reach out to Audrey. The audition information's on our website, and encourage your student to come out. We need those stories. What did it feel like, guys, like Katie said, being the bearer of bad news, when we had to make that shift as an organization for the safety of everyone involved? How did it feel? I mean, for us, obviously, for everyone, it's been heartbreaking, but you know, it's also a little bit exciting, right? We have an opportunity to reach more people. But I'd love to hear from each of you. Like Lauren, when you first got the news, what did you think?
It was of understandably really challenging. Right around the time that the changes were happening, I was like 9 days away from doing a half marathon, and I was like in the best shape ever to do it. And so that happened, and then I knew the show was going to be canceled. So I had to really sit with myself and allow myself to feel the disappointment. I think a lot of people tried to avoid that, like, oh, like it's okay, keep moving. No, like sorry, that was my dog.
That's okay.
No, it's okay to accept the disappointment of the things that we lost, or the opportunities that we didn't get to have, or the events we didn't get to have because of the pandemic. However, I just want to applaud you, Jen, and your team, because you pivoted very quickly. So we were like disappointed, and then right away your team got together and found a way to engage with people online. I do storytelling workshops in my part of Virginia all the time, never done them virtually. That was an incredible experience for me. People were writing me and telling me how their writing was growing. I could see on people's faces how engaging that was. You all did like a yoga, you've done a couple of yoga flows, coloring. So I just want to say that, like, I really respect how fast you all pivoted and realized that people needed to have some comfort in this really, really challenging time. And I can't thank you enough for allowing me to be part of it, because it really brought back a lot of joy to my heart to be able to be involved in this Inspire Brave in some capacity.
Yeah, the workshop was amazing. We got such great feedback and appreciated how you jumped in, right? We called you and we're like, hey, can you lead this workshop? We know you do this. And you're like, heck yeah, I'm in. So it was awesome. It was definitely a huge team effort. So thank you. Heather, what about for you? What did it feel like when the news came out?
I think I felt in different stages, different things, because at first, like in March, when we initially said, okay, you know, we're going to postpone it and we're going to shoot for October. So I felt at the time in March, I just felt so much confusion because things were just starting to shut down. I'm a special ed teacher. So, you know, that was before school started closing. It was right before my spring break. So there was just this level of confusion about everything. It was the whole idea of this pandemic was starting to sink in. And I think the postponement of This Is My Brave St. Louis show was just part of that. And so it was just kind of like, okay, this is really serious. The seriousness set in once things really started getting canceled. And like I said, as a teacher, it wasn't but maybe 2 weeks later that, you know, schools were postponed week after week, and then finally it was like, okay, we're done. And so everything was going to be virtual. And so then when we said, you know, we're going to do this virtual platform, that was another layer of, okay, it's going to be challenging, but gosh, think of who we could reach, and think of the idea of being virtual and being able to be out in the masses rather than just one show, one night. So I just felt conflicted almost, because I wanted a live show. I wanted that feeling that I felt in the DeKalb show. But on the other hand, I felt like this was such a great opportunity to reach more people. I think my biggest disappointment came when we said it was just going to be canceled, and it was just going to be not even a taping of a virtual show. I think that hit hardest for me, and that was just in the last 2 to 3 weeks where it was like, oh, my heart hurt quite a bit. And so I think, like, I would like to piggyback on what Lauren said, just applauding you guys to knowing that you just figured it out and you came up with a solution, and that really helped thinking, okay, we are still going to do this. It is still going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I'll even jump in on that. And even being on the Brave team, like, it wasn't easy for me. And we had a lot of, I had like hard, sad conversations with Jen and hard, sad conversations with you, Heather. And like, it is difficult. And exactly what Lauren said, I think we all deserve this grieving process of what's happening this year. Because when you look back at the beginning of the year when all this started and think about everything you had planned this year, even obviously outside of This Is My Brave. And so there are so many things being canceled, and we involved so many people that was what was so heartbreaking to me. Was like, I never wanted anyone to feel let down or like their stories didn't matter. So that was always our underlying like push, though, was that we have an obligation to people and to audience members to continue getting these stories out, because even though it's challenging and it's not ideal, we still just have to do it. So, I mean, I get it. I think I still have grief moments over it when certain things hit me, but all in all, I love our casts and all of our storytellers, and I'm just glad we can do this.
I'm so grateful for technology that can bring us together like this, for these conversations, and for allowing us to get the stories out, because I feel like those of us who live with these mental health conditions have so much to offer in a time like this, when there may be so many who are just first experiencing depression or anxiety because of the pandemic. Like, we have years and years of skills that we've built up as how we've coped, how we've managed successfully. And this is what does shine through in the stories that we share, which is why we were so determined to find a way to make this happen. And it is exciting to see how it's going to pan out. And so October can't come soon enough, although we do need the time to get everything organized. So yeah, so I guess a question I have too is, like, what was it like for you guys staying connected to your cast during quarantine and having these virtual rehearsals? Because we all know right now the isolation is so hard. We miss our friends and family that we don't see face to face. So what's it been like? Audrey?
Well, for the upcoming cast, we're just forming it now, so we haven't had any rehearsals. But at the end of last year, we did have kind of a meeting in the middle of, it was either April or May, to kind of just check in with all the college students and just see where everyone was at. So that was really nice. And a couple of the students from last year want to help out this year. So I feel like people are staying connected and still supporting each other, which has been really cool.
And they're such a great group. Like, the first group of College Edition was so great. So I love that they want to stay involved.
Yeah.
Hopefully they will.
Lauren, what about for you? How's it been convening your cast virtually?
I'm really thankful that we were able to have a cast party, and we had it at Dave & Buster's. I don't know how many people have Dave & Buster's where they're at. It's like an adult arcade. And we got to have fun and socialize, and I got to see the storytellers make connections. We had 2 other live rehearsals, and I'm really thankful for those experiences, because I think they laid the groundwork for us to really bond. They were really clamoring to see each other physically when we were allowed to reopen. So we had a small, socially distanced rehearsal. And it honestly, I didn't realize that we needed it, because it's been challenging for all of us. Some people have loved ones living with them that were not living with them before, and they've got that challenge. It's understandable that some people's mental illness has been triggered by this experience. So for us to be there and comfort one another and laugh, and that was so great. We did a virtual rehearsal with Erin last week, and I was like a little bit like, oh no, are we still going to have that spark over Zoom? But it was so amazing. And I just am grateful that we had those moments together in person. So I think that's why the spark, it's traveled with us virtually. And I just think that they're like, a lot of people are hungry for connection.
Mm-hmm.
So it was good. We're making it work.
That's awesome. Heather, what about you and Katie? How's it been?
Well, I think, and I know every show has, their teams and cast and members probably come together and they get really close. And I think for us, at least, at our cast party, I was really able to express why we were there and how much it meant to me. And I think from the get-go, the love and support that I felt from the cast was just so immediate. And I think the level of connectedness and the level of trust formed so fast. And I think we were able to have at least one, maybe two auditions. I can't remember how many we had, Katie, but I think it was a welcome party and one
rehearsals. I think we had two.
Rehearsal.
I think we had two right before.
Yeah, I think you're right. And so it just seemed like each time there was more and more connections making, and I would see people, making plans, like we're all friends on Facebook. Oh, hey, I saw you did this. And it just felt so cohesive to me. And when we stopped, I was so worried that we would lose that. And while we all haven't been able to be on the same Zoom call at the same time, we have been able to keep in contact with the cast members just to do, hey, how are you? I think at one point we did have a virtual rehearsal, which was great. So I was worried, but when we had the rehearsal and we went through our stories, I was telling Katie and the other two producers of St. Louis how invigorating that made me, and how much we didn't lose of the cohesiveness and the connectedness that we felt, and the trust that we had built. The trust is still there, and I was so grateful, and our St. Louis cast was just amazing, and I cannot wait to not only bring it virtually, but bring it live eventually as well.
Yes, we will get to the stage. So it's just a matter of time. It's interesting what you say, Heather, because I feel like I've lived it for the past 7 years. Like there's something about when you get a group of like-minded people together and you're able to just immediately talk about your mental health and what you've gone through, that it's almost like this immediate bonding thing that happens. And I see it with all that, like with Audrey's 2018 show and with Lauren's 2018 show that she was in, and now at the St. Louis cast and these other groups, they form like little families. And then we've got our big family in our private Facebook group, and everyone stays in touch. And if only the whole world could be like that, right? And just break down those walls and give the small talk and talk about the important stuff. That's what we are all about. We're putting names and faces on our stories to break down that stigma, because when you break it down, it affects all of us.
Yeah, exactly. And I know that like we've all gotten burnt out and of virtual meetings and things like that. And every time we've had a Zoom gathering with our St. Louis cast, someone will say, or it's even me being like, I was not in the mood for this tonight. Like I did not want to get on the computer. And then I'm so glad that I did. Like we have these conversations and they're deep, or we're laughing or supporting each other, because so much is happening right now, aside from just like regular life, like so much is happening. So we really—
I have to second that, Katie. Like there are times definitely where I'm like, oh, another Zoom call, or, I think about checking in with a family member or a friend. But when you get on and you make that connection and you're able to see the person, thank goodness for FaceTime and Zoom calls and Google Meet. We've been switching it up because it gets a little boring to always do Zoom or always do whatever, but we do need that. So I urge everyone out there to, even if you're not feeling up to that reach out, please still do it, because that we need it right now.
Yeah, I'm just gonna hop off, but
So I just want to say, Heather and Katie, what a beautiful way to honor Jason by bringing a show to your area. I am on the chapter board for AFSP in my area, and I'm always so moved and astonished at people who've lost someone to suicide who move into advocacy and do events, because that level of grief, as you know, is challenging and hard, and it sticks with you. I am an attempt survivor, and I'm so sorry, I didn't want to make this an emotional thing. I just think that it is so beautiful. What a beautiful way to honor Jason by bringing this amazing platform. And people are going to hear stories of people that live with mental illness. And it could be that one person who says, yeah, I'm going to go tell this person that I'm struggling. I'm going to see a therapist because that's okay. Or there's nothing wrong with me, that I'm living with that. And I'm so grateful for people like you. I participate in so many Out of the Darkness walks, and it's the people like you that are there and hugging and comforting, and you give something that people who don't have that experience just don't understand. So I just think that's so wonderful. I wanted to say that.
Thanks, Lauren. That means a lot to me.
I mean,
and I know it does with Katie too. I think the two of us have felt like just this need to advocate, but also just spread the word about, it's okay to not be okay. And my story isn't over yet. And Lauren, I am so thankful that you're here. I am thankful that you decided to continue this journey and with all of its challenges. So thank you for being here.
Thank you. So sorry I made us have that Oprah moment. It was just almost.
I love it.
No,
I love it.
That.
Why we're here, honestly. Like, I cried in my interview with Jen. Like, it's fine. That's why we're here.
Yeah, we're the Brave family. It definitely, that's what I don't even remember when we coined that term, but it definitely has become this community family. So, well, guys, I feel like we've covered everything. Was there anything that I missed, or should we go around and leave with our viewers with one piece of advice?
You want to do advice? Do you want me to start?
Yes.
Okay. I thought about it beforehand. So I think my biggest piece of advice, and this is kind of what I'm doing with myself right now, because I probably would have had a different piece like 2 or 3 months ago, but is to put the time and effort into yourself right now, that you really, all of us deserve to heal and recover from what we're going through. And even if you think you're recovered, and not to say that you're not, but I found like Band-Aids on myself, and I realized I didn't really want to live like that anymore. And it's time for me to like face those. So I think really honoring yourself and putting yourself first, especially right now, is really, really important, whether you have a mental illness or not, just to honor yourself and move forward as best you can. Who wants to go next? Heather?
I'll jump in, sure. I think my biggest piece of advice that I've been telling people since I lost my son, and I had, a year to grieve and to really be at that lowest point in my life, I started looking for joy. And I realized and learned that I could find joy, even though I maybe didn't want to, or I didn't feel like I was allowed to. When I think we start allowing ourselves to feel good or feel joy, I think that's a big part of the healing process. And I would just say that in any situation, whether it's through a pandemic, whether you are struggling with your own mental health, what have you, grief, I think it's so important to be able to find joy. Joy and gratitude have been the two things that have really helped pull me out of my darkest days. And it's the most challenging, but I think the most worthwhile.
Good advice, Heather.
Mm-hmm.
Audrey, Lauren?
I guess I'll go. Self-care, trendy word, right? Self-care. But what do we really know what self-care is? So this is how I say it to people. We're all like water wells, okay? We're best when our water well is full, but life takes from the water well. our jobs, our kids, the triggering things that happens. And a lot of us have been living in the pandemic with empty water wells. Self-care is what we do every day to pour back into the well, right? It's more than just a pedicure and a hairdo, although that is very nice. So self-care to me looks like, I know I need 7 hours of sleep to function well. I walk my dog Boo every day because it amuses me and it gets the day started right. I spend time with the God of my understanding. These are things I do every single day, right? That helps me be my best self. That's when my water is overflowing, right? When it's overflowing, that's what I can give to everybody else. That's the best advice I can give to people right now is don't forget to fill your cup first, and the overflow is what you get to share with everybody else. The filling, that's the self-care. That's the self-care.
I love that, Lauren. That's
So-
awesome.
Yeah, thanks, Lauren, for sharing. That was great.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Audrey, what would you say?
I mean, Jen, you've already mentioned this, but my biggest piece of advice would to just be to find ways to stay connected with the people that you care about. I think it's really easy to isolate right now. And when we isolate, often our mental health issues can kind of resurface. So just finding ways to stay connected with people. And maybe I'm biased because I'm a therapist, but I think that everyone should be in therapy at some point in their lives. I think everyone can benefit from it. Even if you don't have a severe diagnosable mental health disorder, anyone can find ways to better themselves. So everyone should be in therapy.
Yes, I would second that 1,000,000%. All of us would. I see the hands going up. And actually, I should plug it. We have an offer with BetterHelp. They've been very generous to us, to our viewers and followers, that if you go to betterhelp.com/thisismybrave, you can get a month of free online therapy. And I personally use BetterHelp and I love it. I've used it almost a year now. And I can't say enough good things about it. So not sponsored, just an offer they've given
Not
us.
sponsored. We really don't get anything for it, which is, I want people to know that. Like, it's just especially right now, sorry, I'm like taking this on a side note really fast, but people who are unsure of teletherapy, it's just a really great way to try it, to see if it's a fit for you. And then you can move on. But 4 free sessions, like, do it and try it out and then see what happens. So we love that.
Give it a shot.
Yeah.
Thanks for that disclaimer, Katie.
You're welcome.
So you guys, thank you so much. Thank you, Lauren. Thank you, Heather. Thank you, Audrey. Thank you, Katie, as always, for joining us today on Brave TV. We're so thankful for all the time, effort, energy, and heart you put into This Is My Brave and being a part of this organization. We could not do it without you guys. Be sure to join us next Saturday, August 8th, for part 2 of This Is My Brave, The Lost Season, with producers from our Houston, New Hampshire, and DC area high school shows. So thank you guys so much again for joining us. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.